And this is how I ended up here. That man who davened the Kotel, he never knew. He went home that Wednesday afternoon, made supper, went to sleep. He didn't even know about Dallas.
Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rabbi Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
Shalom Avracha. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Emor, the Torah speaks about all kinds of specific laws pertaining to Kohanim. The first law that is brought down is the law that they are prohibited to become impure. For example, to touch a dead body, because they'll become impure and they have to stay pure. As we know, they have a special set of laws. They're on a higher level than the rest of Klal Yisrael. And Parshas Emor speaks about all these laws. However, it's very interesting to note that at the beginning of the Parsha, the Torah when stating this specific law of not allowing to become impure, it says the following: Emor LaKohanim b'nei Aaron ve'amart aleim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, say to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and say to them. Obviously, there's a redundancy over here that's very evident. Why does it saying say and say to them? Rashi quotes the Gemara in Yevamos, Daf Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, that immediately derives from here, from the double language, that the Torah is actually teaching another rule to the Kohanim. And the Torah is saying it's not enough that you have to ensure you don't become impure, but also you have to do your best not to make your children impure, which the language in the Gemara is, that Rashi quotes, to also teach us, the Kohanim, lehazir gdoilim al aktanim. Adults must also ensure that children also observe these laws. The Gemara in Yevamos derives from here to all the Torah, that all the time we're not only responsible for ourselves, but to a certain extent also to our children. This raised a question to me. It's very interesting. Out of all the places in the Torah that the Torah is trying to teach us for every case, that we have to ensure that our children also observe the same laws we need to observe, why is it through the Kohanim that the Torah is teaching us? If anything, I would think that's the least mat'im place to teach us such a thing, because Kohanim is very specific. Why is the Torah teaching us something that's relevant to all of Klal Yisrael in the Parsha of Kohanim? So I searched and I didn't find someone asking this question. And Yirtzeh Hashem, I will suggest an answer, but I did see a different question. The Oznaim LaTorah, Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, points out something very interesting, because there are in that Gemara in Yevamos Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph, the Gemara actually learns this idea of lehazir gdoilim al aktanim, that adults must ensure that children also observe these laws, not only from our parsha that I just said, but also from two other places together. One is the prohibition of blood, that one is not allowed to eat blood, and that talks about Klal Yisrael, and the other one is about shratzim. A person is not allowed to eat any types of shratzim. However, he asks a different question. He says, how come over there, the way the Torah derives from there, that a person has to ensure that his kids also abide by the same laws, it's not learned from a redundant lashon, from a duplicate lashon. Rather, it's learned from a totally different way. And he asks, why is it specifically here by the Kohanim that the Torah teaches us this idea of lehazir gdoilim al aktanim, that adults must ensure and warn that their children also go and abide by the same laws and refrain from the same prohibition? Over here has to be taught through the duplicate lashon. Say to them and say to them again. And he answers a beautiful idea that will actually also answer my question. He says that it's pretty evident that there are two primary forces that shape a child. Force number one are the parents' effect on the child. But the other one, which might even be stronger, is the society around him. So when it comes to things like shratzim and blood, it's not unique to the Kohanim. Everyone has the same law, the same prohibition. So society reinforces what the parent is saying. Over there, we don't have to teach this idea by saying the duplicate lashon, say to them and say to them, because the parents don't need to reinforce it so often because the society is backing them up. However, the laws pertaining specifically to the Kohanim, such as the law we're talking about, that you're not allowed to become impure, only the Kohanim can go to Kivri Tzadikim. They can't go into a cemetery. So they have all these laws that everyone around them can do, but they can't. Over here, the society is going the other way. Over here, says Rav Sorotskin, here we need the double lashon. It is necessary, because when society is pulling the opposite direction, a parent cannot say it just once and assume, oh, it landed, everything's going to be fine. He must say it again and again. And Rav Sorotskin takes us to a practical takeaway level and says, today, in this day and age, even in frum neighborhoods, for sure, not frum neighborhoods, but even in frum neighborhoods, not everyone is such a high-level God-fearing Jew. And you have to be careful of how society affects one. And hence, you have to do your best to say and say it again, of course, in a nice way, calmly. But you have to ensure that your family goes in the right way. Now, what Rav Sorotskin says actually answers my question. But I want to suggest a different answer. I want to suggest that from a certain perspective, the question was, why is it that through the Kohanim, it's one out of the 3 places that we teach all the Torah Kula, that everywhere we are also responsible for our kids, and we have to warn them also to ensure they don't do the prohibitions we are doing. And I want to suggest the following. I want to come and answer, why specifically in the laws of Kohen and Tuma does the Torah choose to embed the lesson of Chinuch that we're responsible for our kids? He could have derived it from somewhere else, from the requirement of saying Shema. Why Dafka here? And I think perhaps the answer is that what's unique about a Kohen? A Kohen's Kedusha is not really personal. It's functional. They're doing something for us. There are shlichim. There are messengers to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's guarding his purity not only for himself, but for us. He is our bridge to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem. In a certain way, his life is not only for himself, but it's for us. He helps us in the atonement process when he brings a sacrifice for us. He gives us the blessing of the Kohanim. He is there to represent something larger than himself. If we understand this deeply, we understand that in a way, each one of us is a Kohen for our family. This is exactly what a parent is. A parent is a Kohen in their home. Their spiritual carefulness is not only about themselves. It's about affecting everyone around them in their family. The children are watching and absorbing every single move of theirs. Not only the Divrei Torah they say on the table, but way more than that. How are they acting in their everyday, every moment? The Torah plants the Chinuch idea here because the Kohen is the model. He is the clearest picture of what every parent, and in fact, every Jew is supposed to understand about themselves. Because relative to other nations, our nation, the Jewish nation, the chosen nation, is called Memlechet Kohanim. We're all called Kohanim. Hashem told all of Bnei Yisrael at Har Sinai, "Ve'atem tiyu li memleches Kohanim v'goy kadosh." You shall be for me a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. Every Jew relative to the nations of the world carries the Kohen's responsibility. We are ambassadors of Hashem. We have to watch our every move. In Lashon HaKodesh, there's a hint to it. The word that represents influence is hashpa'a, and it shares its root with the word shipua, a slope or incline. Perhaps because true influence does not come from lecturing or protesting. It trickles down slowly and gradually, like water flowing down the hillside, through the personal example we set every single day. The Rambam spells out this idea in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. He says the more a person represents Torah, the more he's visibly Jewish and a Talmid Chacham, the greater the stakes. A Chilul Hashem committed by someone who looks the part, we'll call it, sends a huge ripple effect to the world that cannot be easily undone. On the flip side, a Kiddush Hashem, he could do a huge Kiddush Hashem by doing any right move, even a nice word, a nice smile, acting in the proper fashion. Yiratzon, that we'll be able to take this idea and realize we are always, from a certain perspective, a Kohen, not only in our family, but when the whole world watches us. I'd like to end with an amazing story that brings the point home. This story is adopted from Rav Avram Stolberger. A person that lives in Dallas walked into a Jewish store and asked, I want to find the most genuine Orthodox Torah shul in the city. No shortcuts, no compromises. Someone that they do the real thing. They directed him to Rabbi Rodin's shul. He walked in, sat down with the rabbi, and said, listen, I really want to help support the shul. Is there anything you need? And he said, actually, we're in the midst of a building campaign and we're down like $2 million. So on the spot, this seems to be almost non-Jewish, but he was Jewish. Jew writes that exact amount that the shul desperately needed to complete the building campaign. That shul later on became to be a dynamic force for Torah in Dallas for decades. But the rabbi asked him, I don't understand. You don't even know me. It sounds like you've never stepped in to this shul ever. Why are you giving so much money to help us? Which is a very nice thing and it's amazing and you'll be rewarded for it in this world and the world to come. But why? And he says the following story. I just came back from Israel. I took some pictures. I went to the Kotel. And when I was at the Kotel taking some pictures and just touring around, I saw some frum Jew who was davening at the Kotel on that Wednesday afternoon. I'll never forget what I saw. He stood in the corner, eyes closed, pouring his heart out to God. He had no idea anyone was watching, but I was watching. With my big cowboy hat and sound, I was just visiting, but I couldn't believe what I saw. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. The intensity, the sincerity, the way he spoke to Hashem, as if he was right there. At that point, I made a decision. I am going home and I'm trying to find the closest shul to where I live that is the same type of Jew as this Jew. And this is how I ended up here. That man who davened at the Kotel, he never knew. He went home that Wednesday afternoon, made supper, went to sleep. He didn't even know about Dallas. He didn't know about the building campaign. He didn't know about anything. He didn't know how his 20-minute tefillah had a ripple effect. But one day, after 120 years, he will stand in Beis Din Shel Mala, and they will show him his life, his Torah, his mitzvahs. And then suddenly, scenes from Dallas, how many shiurim thanks to him, how many families became religious, Shabbos tables, generations of this. And he will say, I'm sorry, but I have to be honest, I think there's a mistake. I've never been to Dallas. And they will say, no, that one Wednesday afternoon at the Kotel, when you didn't even know anyone was watching you, this is the ripple effect it created. This is what we're talking about, Memleches Kohanim, in its purest form. The man was not even trying to inspire anyone. He was not even doing outreach. He was simply being a Kohen, living life in the way that he knew what it was all about. Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.